Hello? Oh, hey, Mike. Yeah, I was just checking out the pilot unit here. It looks snazzy. Can't wait to start pitching to retailers. So these graphics chips are fast, huh? Faster than Bill at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Yeah, that's pretty fast. Wow. Yeah, I didn't get any roast beef either. Hey, question. It looks like we're missing something. Like, where's the floppy drives? Cartridges? With watch batteries. Okay. Got it. So they can buy disk drives, though, separately, right? How much for those? 700. Okay. Okay, yeah, we can work with that. Thank God IBM charges $4K for their garbage, huh? So, what's the specs on those bad boys? Yeah, I can wait. They were a bargain? Please don't say they're Twiggies. Please don't say they're Twiggies. 360K? Why didn't we go for larger? Yeah, I guess that's true. That'll help pay rent. Yeah, I heard the landlord changed the locks on Thursday. Yeah, luckily Mikey and Steve found enough change in their Pinto seat cushions to pay him off. What about a hard drive? No hard drive. On a graphics workstation. Bold. Very bold. Wait, the power supply stays on all the time? Won't that, like, wear it out? Sells more computers. Got it. I'm sure we in marketing can spin that. Oh boy. Also, I was looking at this list of compatible software, so how did you pick what software to leave out? Focus group. I didn't hear about the focus group. Who did you use for the... Sarah from accounting? And the janitor. Yeah, I mean, I guess an every man or every woman perspective helps. So, I don't see many games on this list. Like, no King's Quest, no Flight Simulator. My retail contacts are saying that Flight Simulator game is actually selling like hotcakes. Yeah, no Flight Simulator, huh? Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, flying on a computer does sound kind of boring. Yeah, I give it 2 years tops. So, how much does it cost to get the full load on this thing? F you, really? Listen, Bob, I gotta run. I'm late for a meeting. Yeah, I'll talk to you later. Much later. Alrighty, welcome to another Tech Time Traveler video, and today I have one of my favorite IBM compatible-ish machines, the Mindset. I've been wanting one of these for years, but they're crazy rare, which is how I ended up with 3 of them. The story of the Mindset begins in the early 80s. Allegedly, Roger Badertscher, head of Atari's home computing division at the time, wanted to create a new, advanced, modular design computer with impressive, accelerated graphics. To get this project off the ground, Roger utilized Atari's industrial design resources, sort of skunkworks-like, as well as VLSI engineer Chris Rode. The record isn't exactly clear timing-wise, but it seems like Roger and about a dozen employees departed Atari in 1982 to form RHB Computers, so named after his initials. Seeking a more inspirational name, the company turned to NameLab, the same company that helped develop the name Compaq, to deliver a name that represented intelligence and progress. NameLab suggested Mindset, and the rest is history. The Mindset was supposed to be the machine that upended expectations of personal computers. Everything from the swoopy, in-your-face styling to the, for its time, incredible graphics performance. This was the machine that was supposed to deliver us from the sluggish, stodgy utilitarianism of the original PC. I feel like Mindset got its name from the desire to completely change everyone's thinking about what personal computers were, in that they didn't have to be boring steel boxes that only pumped out eye-killing monochrome green text. They could dazzle us with visual spectacle. They could be works of art in their own right. Speaking of art, that's exactly how the Museum of Modern Art in New York felt about this machine. They liked the design of the Mindset so much they added one to their permanent collection. It's still there today, making the Compaq Macs also in the museum's collection look like bathroom trash cans. Sporting an Intel 8186 and 32 kilobytes of memory, what the... Okay, technically it had 64K, but half of that was dedicated to video, and that was a worthwhile enterprise. Anyway, the base Mindset looked just like this and retailed for about $1,100. Now, you're probably squinting at the screen looking for, some kind of storage medium like a floppy drive, and you could get that for another $700 in a separate module that plugged in from the top. But you didn't have to. You could run this machine on, get this, cartridges. Yes, in addition to offering software on ROM cartridge, Mindset also offered non-volatile RAM cartridges that were backed up by internal batteries. These cartridges acted like today's flash drives and came in sizes, I think, of 16 or 32 kilobytes, and they could be used to save and retrieve your work. Yeah, so forget crummy floppy disks. The future is solid state. The Mindset also came standard with something that definitely was not standard in 1984, a mouse. And what a stylish little beast this thing is. Way more aesthetically appealing than this piece of garbage. This is one of the most solidly designed compact vintage mice I've ever held, and the ball is made of steel. I'll let the jokes take care of themselves. Another thing that set the Mindset apart, aside from its appearance, was its modularity. Mindset had the idea that an end user need never pull out a screwdriver to add features to their machine. All they needed to do was toss something on top or plug something in the back, and you were done. No screws to lose. And hey, if you wanted to take your Mindset to work or your friend's house, they even had a custom bag for it. With a plastic casing, this thing was pretty lightweight. Of course, one of Mindset's main target markets was people looking to create digital art. To that end, Mindset offered a professional graphics tablet for drawing, and they had 3 different software packages available, sort of a low-end, medium, and high-end product for different users. Another interesting piece of kit was the image capture module. This device allowed the user to grab a still frame image of anything from an NTSC standard video source. It would then let you map out the colors and save the resulting image on a floppy disk. That's a pretty neat feature for the mid-80s. Check out this video production module with its fader control. Mindset was serious about dipping into the video editing market, which was awaiting a digital revolution. With this unit, you could superimpose things like text or special effects onto existing video using another source. Yep, together with the above-mentioned tools and tote bag, you had yourself a portable television studio. And wow, the graphics performance on this thing, well, to our spoiled by 4K eyes in 2022, there's nothing particularly special about any of this. But in 1984, you really would have been impressed. Mindset had 2 custom VLSI chips designed to massively improve graphics performance. One increased the number of bits or pixels that could be displayed on the screen at once. The other chip could crank out graphics 50 times faster than IBM's CGA. That's 50 as in 50. Offloading the task of rendering graphics from the CPU, as it was typically done on PCs then, to these custom chips, massively sped up performance. Having a sort of blitter a year before Amiga hit the scene, and while most of the competition was still stuck in either character graphics or 16-color blocks at best, I mean, this ultra-smooth Saturn demonstration is really impressive for the time. If I'd had a Mindset back then, and the ability to summon smoothly animated graphics like this in BASIC, I might have actually gotten serious about programming. Yeah, compared to the CGA hell I was living in at the time, I would have taken this any day. Mindset was looking forward and had big plans. It's been suggested to me that Mindset wasn't 100% about being a PC compatible per se. It was more like they wanted to develop a whole platform above and beyond that happened to have some PC compatibility. Mindset's impressive specs attracted the interest of some technology bigwigs at the time, including one Bill Gates, who helped Mindset's team with emulating the IBM character set in the hopes of developing the machine as a showcase for Microsoft's forthcoming Windows 1.0. According to insiders, Jack Tramiel, who had recently purchased Atari and turned it into his personal revenge vehicle against his former employer Commodore, actually considered purchasing Mindset because Atari's next-generation computer. Yep, Atari might have bought back a computer designed in part with Atari resources. The Mindset may have been the Atari ST. With a price tag that was actually cheaper than an IBM and way less expensive than a professional graphics workstation, Mindset thought they'd hit the sweet spot. I definitely wouldn't have minded having this thing on my desk at all, if I hadn't been a broke 9-year-old when it came out. It just looks so friggin' cool, especially considering it's from 1984. Mindset even had a user group newsletter, the first Mindset user group, or FMUG, and they offered updates on the company's products or situation, along with tips and tricks, and the occasional get-together to talk Mindset stuff or tour the company's facilities. Yeah, with all this going for it, the Mindset sure looked like a winner. Mindset hoped their obviously superior machine would sell like hotcakes, but they'd fallen victim to the build-a-better mousetrap, mindset. Had the Mindset come out in 1982 before Compaq blew open the doors to IBM compatibles, it may well have done better. But the scene in 1984 was kind of ugly for a brand new PC clone maker, especially one not offering 100% compatibility with existing software. There were hordes of PC clone makers out there offering exactly that now, Compaq included. There were a tsunami of ever cheaper machines coming from Asia, particularly Japan, where companies often had actual directives to undercut their American competitors at any cost. With all those competing marks out there, Mindset struggled to be heard above the din. For a machine with so many kick-butt features, Mindset did surprisingly little marketing to push it. In the retail space, Mindset machines were often left in the unsophisticated hands of general computer retailers, who apparently for some reason tried to sell it as sort of being like a Mac, if they tried to sell it at all. This was an issue InfoWorld flagged when they reviewed the system in 1984, noting Mindset Corporation lacked the huge financial resources required to set up a proper dealer network and market their machine effectively. Another problem for the Mindset was reliability. The power supply for the Mindset was a weak 65-watt unit that wilted under pressure. Making things even worse, the power supply, when plugged in, was always on. This is because the computer retained some basic user preferences and configuration information, like a modern BIOS does today, but it lacked battery backup. So the power supply supplied a continuous trickle charge, so to speak, that kept these settings while the machine wasn't in use, only activating a relay that supplied full power to the system when a switch on the Mindset keyboard was pressed. If you lost power at the outlet, the computer would lose these settings and give you a warning to that effect, requiring you to input them again. Since they were otherwise turned on all the time, the power supplies typically wore out pretty quickly while toasting the plastic grill above them, and later on users would have to rig up their own externally since very few off-the-shelf parts would fit in the Mindset's low-profile case. Further, that sweet, toolless, plug-and-play modular design came at the price of not being able to just plug in your newest third-party ISA expansion card. And eventually, as more expansion options arrived for the PC, that would have sucked. The PC's plethora of expansion options were a big plus to consumers, even if it did mean getting your hands dirty, and you went against that grain at your peril. A huge problem though was software. You see, the 8186 is kind of a different beast. It shares the same basic instruction set as its predecessors, the 8086 and the 8088, even adding a few instructions. But the 186 is more of a microcontroller than a plain microprocessor. In an embedded system such as industrial controls or such, a premium is placed on keeping things compact. And so on the 186, many peripherals like timers, DMA, and interrupt controllers were located internally. This was a major problem for software that looked for those resources where they'd be on a conventional PC and couldn't find them. And that resulted in some pretty serious issues with lots of the existing PC software base. You might wonder why Mindset and several other companies like Tandy, Polo, and Modular Advanced Design fell for the 8186's siren song. Well, that's because the 8186, thanks to its pumped-up core, could run a lot of instructions considerably faster than the 8086 or the 8088, and could somewhat compete with a low-end 286. It was also cheaper than the 286, allowing you to offer a faster machine than the XT-class competition for less. Finally, the 186 wasn't subject to pesky, sensitive technology export restrictions like the then brand new 286. Companies like Mindset weren't flying blind here. They knew well about the 186's potential compatibility issues, and Mindset in particular did their best to ameliorate these. According to Mindset, they worked hard on their BIOS and locked in compatibility for about 80% of available PC software at the time. That might have been a slight overestimation, and what they locked out sadly were often popular software, like games. We can forgive Mindset's oversight on the compatibility issue. Hindsight is always 20/20, and at the time of its design, likely in late 1982, full IBM PC software compatibility might reasonably have been seen not as entirely necessary. At that moment in computing history, the IBM PC was still pretty new, and although it carried the fabled IBM nameplate, and the expectation was certainly that it would succeed in some way, I don't think many people realized how much the PC as a platform would come to dominate the market, thanks to Microsoft's forward-thinking arrangement to be able to sell MS-DOS separately. In 1982 and 83, there were still a ton of proprietary 8 and 16-bit machines around, and it wasn't really unreasonable to think that you could still carve out your own space. But by 1984, software developers were coalescing around the increasingly ubiquitous MS-DOS platform. It soon became pretty clear Mindset's game plan wasn't working. Given the massive development costs and poor sales, Mindset had to largely give up on the home market, although they did continue to support it through a newsletter. Instead, Mindset turned their focus to the graphics workstation and video production niche. They released several new models of Mindset, including the Video Production System, the Professional Video Graphics System, and the Mindset 2. The Mindset 2 represented a major overhaul, with 512 kilobytes of system RAM and 128K of video RAM right out of the box. With powerful software like Lumina and Designer at their fingertips, and with the various hardware accessories at hand, video production professionals could pull off some pretty impressive feats, at a fraction of the cost of a bona fide graphics workstation. An important submarket that opened up for Mindset was in video titling. Although this might sound like a rather rudimentary concern today, in the early 80s it was really tricky and expensive to add a simple title to your video. You had to first synchronize two distinct video sources, one being your video and the other being the device that was superimposing your text. This required expensive, specialized equipment, but the development of software that made titling possible with the Mindset made that system a cheaper and easier to use option. This was kicked into motion when a programmer named Tom Meeks came up with an idea to create a simple method of displaying text over video that made use of Mindset's video overlay capabilities. He demonstrated the technology using BASIC. Mindset itself was intrigued, but the licensing arrangement they had with Microsoft for their BASIC was such that incorporating this ability would incur costly licensing fees, which Mindset could ill afford. They asked Meeks if he could come up with an assembly language option instead. Meeks set out looking for someone familiar with assembly who could oblige. Through a computer store salesman to whom Meeks had given one of his business cards, programmer Steve Bress was given Meeks' contact information. 9 months and 27,000 lines of assembly language later, and using the user interface Tom had designed, the appropriately named video titler was born, published by Steve's company, Entropy Engineering. This unassuming piece of software inaugurated the desktop video software market, stealing, by Steve's estimation, about 10% of the market away from the industry leader, Chiron. Not since Don Lancaster's TV typewriter had such a simple and inexpensive way to add text to video been put in the hands of the general public. Mindset was forced to enter bankruptcy in 1985, but thanks to these developments and some financial restructuring, the company was able to emerge from Chapter 11 and hang in there for another year, creating several new models that were specifically aimed at video titling. These included the Mindset model M1500, M2000, and finally the M3000. At first blush, things seemed to be going on an upward trajectory, but the positivity was short-lived. Mindset's efforts to incorporate a SCSI hard drive into their newest model ran into major technical difficulties. According to various sources, the machine simply didn't work properly, and while efforts were made to iron out the kinks, buyers stopped buying the older models in a classic case of what's known as the Osborne effect. Further, by this time, competing video production options were out there, eating into Mindset's share of the niche. Eventually, the financial hole was so deep, Mindset simply couldn't dig its way out. This innovative, unique little technology company finally succumbed in late 1986, closing its doors forever and liquidating its assets. Perhaps if Mindset had been a little earlier to the scene, perhaps if they had had a tighter focus, they might well have lived longer than a few years. Closure is a sad outcome, but it was an outcome for literally dozens of other computer companies in an era when standardization around the IBM PC platform was beating out most proprietary designs. And that's too bad, because when that happened, the computer industry lost a lot of its personality. But thankfully, due to collectors, we do have some examples surviving of Mindset's ingenuity and its passion for design. Now, let us wind back the hands of time and see what this unique piece of PC history can do. Okay, so you might be wondering, given how rare the Mindset is, how I ended up with 3 of these machines and 3 different models to boot. Honestly, I don't know. It just happens sometimes. Nobody knows exactly how many Mindsets were produced, but my guess, based on the serial numbers I've seen, is low 5 figures, maybe less than 10 or 20,000. Most of the Mindset serial numbers I've seen only reach into the hundreds, and some of the peripherals I have, well, check out this memory expansion card. It's just got somebody's handwriting. Anyway, like most collectors trying to control their habit and failing, I had originally intended to buy only one Mindset. I wasn't aware at the time that there was more than one model and saw no need for multiples. But by the time I got around to collecting, they just weren't showing up anywhere for sale with any regularity. Maybe 1 or 2 a year, if you were lucky, and often just pieces of it, not a complete system. So naturally I adopted a piecemeal approach. The first bit of Mindset gear I collected was this professional video graphics system. It came in its original box, but it lacked a keyboard. And this was a problem because on the Mindset, the power switch is integrated into the backside of the keyboard. No keyboard, no way to power it up unless you want to mess with the power control relay. There were no disk drives either. Those were housed in a separate expansion unit, which didn't come with this CPU unit. Plus, the unit didn't come with any cartridges, so that made it pretty useless. It looked really pretty though. A year later, someone contacted me and advised me that they had a mindset they wanted to be rid of. It was really badly yellowed and had a weird CG sticker on it, but he thought it might be working, and best of all, it came with a keyboard. That would at least allow me to attempt to power up the one that I already had, if the one he was selling me didn't work. This CG machine turned out to be a video production system, another one of the later variants of the mindset, so I now had 2 of the 6 or so variants that we knew were out there. It also came with the rare video titler cartridge, a RAM expander, and some plugins for serial and parallel ports. Again, it didn't have the expansion unit with the disk drives. That seemed to be rather rare for some reason, but whatever. I could hardly wait to try firing up both my mindsets now that I had a keyboard, but I was in for a disappointment. The VPS machine powered up, but there was just a solid blue color on screen. Darn it. I could hear a fan going inside, but that was it. The original professional video graphics system didn't work either. Same sort of thing, it powered on and I could hear the fan, but otherwise, zilch. This one wouldn't even give me a color, just darkness. I started investigating the matter and followed Mindset's service manual flowcharts. Unfortunately, the charts weren't very helpful. Basically, the issue pointed to one of 2 causes: either the CPU was dead or the motherboard was dead. There was no instructional on diagnosing and repairing the motherboard. In 1984, the manufacturer's advice was just straight up replacement. And I did try calling them for a replacement board, but yeah, their number's been disconnected. I did try swapping CPUs and then mixing and matching socketed chips between the 2 machines, hoping to shake something loose. But absolutely nothing changed. I felt deflated and defeated. One other disturbing possibility that emerged from a careful reread of the service manual was that the custom video chips had died. That was an absolutely worst case scenario because those chips are completely unobtainium. If the video chips are dead, my mindsets would never operate again. And just to add insult to injury, one day during testing I forgot to unplug the video production machine, leaving the power supply, well, powered, and of course on cue the reefer cap exploded. I came home to a nice fog that smelled like farts and burnt popcorn. Oh well. Anyway, I kept on looking. Months later I managed to score yet another Mindset keyboard in its original box. I had read that the Mindset's keyboard was a smart keyboard and that the computer potentially needed to communicate properly with it and to actually post. Maybe something was wrong with the keyboard that came with the video production unit, but it didn't work. Same problem. I became even more convinced the issue was the darned video chips. I had just gotten unlucky, I thought, and yeah, I did think it was odd that both the machines were showing essentially the same failure mode, but maybe the chips were kind of weak and that's just how it went. Anyway, that's how it sat for another year or so. I kept looking for more Mindset stuff, but it rarely came up, and when it did, it was hotly contested, and when it was on eBay, it went for big bucks. But eventually I managed to score this plain Jane Mindset setup with the disk expansion unit for relatively cheap. The owner had fired it up and gotten a burst of reefer madness, so naturally he shut it down and decided to sell. And that brings us to today. Here's the whole stack. Yep, I seem to have inadvertently gone from just wanting an example of the Mindset for my collection to having one of the larger collections of Mindset gear out there. Whoops, I hate when that happens. Okay, so let's see what we've got here. Man, look at all this stuff. I will compliment the seller on this amazing packing job. This guy did not want a damage claim, and it shows. The CG unit I got prior to this one wasn't packed this well, and several bits of plastic broke on the case, which really sucks. Alright, here's an original Mindset boot disk. Nice. As far as I know, this still works. This is what the seller was using to boot the system when the machine grenaded itself. And what have we here? Ah yes, the offending power supply, with the cut wires. Man, all he had to do was disconnect a Molex connector and unscrew a terminal there. But he probably feared getting sued or something. You know, that's one thing I know about Americans, they love to sue each other. Anyway, I guess I'll just have to jury-rig this thing together again, since I know this power supply was working with this computer and the reefer cap doesn't really have any effect on its performance. What I'm going to do is transfer the cord over from one of the others, remove the reefer cap, and then just see what happens. I don't want to mix and match things and run the risk of blowing up my good Mindset, just in case my other Mindsets have issues with their power supplies. Anyway, here's the keyboard. Yeah, not too much yellowing either. Nice. So now I have 3 Mindset keyboards, and statistically, yeah, one's gotta work, right? We've got ports on the side for joystick and mouse. Any wonder dealers got confused and thought this was like a Mac. Alright, let's open up our Mindset branded bag here. Ooh, très chic. And once again, the seller took no chances and stretch wrapped this thing tight. That's a good thing because there's nothing bolting the expansion unit to the computer unit. The drive unit just literally sits on top, plugged into a kind of flimsy looking connector. If he hadn't wrapped it this well, it could have torqued all over the place and broken the connector at both ends. Very nice. I've never seen a drive unit up close before. It's got a bit of heft to it. Those floppy drives in there are pretty solid chunks of metal. Around the back here we have various ports for plugging in video, audio, television, RGB, and the video production unit, as well as expansion slots for adding RAM and things like parallel cards. Check out the handwritten crazy low serial number on this. Man, I've seen that handwriting before. I've always admired people who could write that neat. I've also got another RAM expansion card that came with the CG machine, and you can see it looks a little more production quality. Unfortunately, the mindset is hard limited to 384 kilobytes, so we can't use this card in conjunction with the other one. You can see the two big cartridge slots on the front here. Often I've seen mindsets like this with the plastic dummy cartridges that usually cover the holes long gone. But in my case I have them, and yep, there we go. Man, what a cool design for 1984. So let's pop off the drive unit here and have a look. Wow, serial number 62. That's low. This CPU unit here is pretty low too. It's in the low 500s. Okay, let's open up our three mindsets and see what they look like inside and see how they differ. The first is our newest mindset, which is the original model. One thing about the mindset, if you do need to go inside the actual unit, you actually have a fair number of various size screws to mess around with. Not my favorite way to go. You also kind of gotta carefully unclip the front bezel, and then you have this long metal bar that connects the cartridge release knob. Yeah, it's not exactly a trivial process. Once you're inside, you can see the machine is basically a single board computer. Expansion is accomplished by a riser board at the back, and the cartridges are plugged into a riser at the front. But yeah, pretty much the entirety of the computer is on this board, and that's really all you need to get going. The motherboard itself is pretty straightforward. Right here in the bottom right corner under a white plastic cover is the relay that connects back to the power switch on the keyboard. Press the keyboard switch and you'll hear a tiny click as the relay kicks in and allows full power to reach the board. Over here we have the brains of the operation, the Intel 8186 CPU. The 186 is quite tiny compared to later CPUs like the 486, and it's quite thin. It doesn't require anything much in the way of a heatsink or fan. This is back in the days when you could get away with that. The mindset uses a 6 MHz unit, but by accident I've demonstrated you can swap in an 8 MHz unit in here, and it seems to work okay. Next we have our main 32K of system RAM. 32K. Even my 1976 digital group system has more than that. Yeesh. And of course we have 32K of video RAM. This was later increased to 128K on the mindset too. Over here we have the two microcontrollers. This one handles functions like system timing, keyboard communication, and so on. The other one here is our sound processor. Mindset actually sold a plug-in module with a second sound processor like this one in it to yield stereo sound. And now we get to the secret sauce. Up here are two chips that make the mindset the unique machine that it is. This chip is the display processor. It basically generates the picture on screen along with color. The chip below it is the graphics processor. This is the unit that does all the math grunt work, kind of like a math coprocessor, accelerating and moving pixels around, allowing the mindset to massively outperform regular CGA-equipped machines by a factor of 50. Over here we have two BIOS ROMs. These ones have a version of 1.07 on the label. I haven't seen any BIOS revision other than that one on any mindset. The ill-fated power supply is over here, although to be honest, all of mine are working except for having blown their reefa caps. I have heard from a number of mindset owners that these supplies often did die completely, necessitating some pretty ugly workarounds. Now, how does this original mindset differ from the video production system, or VPS, and the professional video graphics system, or PVGS? Well, we'll start with the VPS. So, one thing you'll notice right off the bat is the solder mask on the board is a darker green color. Another thing that's gone missing are the bodge wires the original board used, presumably to fix mistakes in the original layout. Another thing Mindset did was move the power supply fan connection over here instead of here. I don't know what the middle pins were left for. They seem to have power all the time now when the power supply is plugged in. Contrary to popular belief, and despite the presence of an external sync port and a bunch of other ports that would suggest the Mindset can do video editing, in fact the original Mindset couldn't do that. According to Mindset, the VPS was what you needed in conjunction with the video production module to actually do things like mix video or do video titling. And that's why on the video production system we see this little daughter board that's been added, which is basically doing the work of genlocking or syncing two different video sources. That's really all that distinguishes this machine from the original Mindset. With the PVGS, we seem to be in a similar situation, only this time the daughter board is twice the size of the one in the VPS. I'm not really sure why or what's going on, but from the PVGS documentation, it looks like this unit could drive a monitor to a higher resolution, 640 by 400, but with more colors available than the standard Mindset, 4 versus 2. I think the goal with the PVGS was to offer a graphic capability that got close to the then standard resolution of television. I'm not sure if the PVGS required a special monitor or not. My memory of these resolutions is a little fuzzy. But yeah, the presence of the daughter boards is really the only thing that distinguishes the three machines, as far as I can tell. Anyway, that's the basic computer. If we open up the expansion unit that plugs in above, we can see we have an 8272 disk controller, which was pretty common in PCs. We also have 192 kilobytes of extra RAM, which quite honestly really is necessary to make this machine usable with most software. And of course we have two Shugart SA455 360 kilobyte double-sided, double-density floppy drives. These are nothing special and were actually quite common among clone PCs. Mindset's just removed the faceplates and installed a special adapter for the floppy lever. Now, according to some original Mindset sales information, they did offer a single drive expansion unit, but I haven't been able to find any evidence that this actually existed, and have actually talked to some people in the know at Mindset, and they said it was never actually offered. Finally, we have the keyboard. This is a pretty sturdy unit and it feels pretty dense. I think it's just kind of a heavy-duty plastic. And as mentioned, it has two ports on either side, very similar to later 68K Mac keyboards. This makes for convenient connection of peripherals like the mouse and joystick, with minimal cord hanging out, although some users apparently complained that the mouse connector in particular had a tendency to work its way out of the socket while in use. Like the IBM PC and XT, Mindset has a pretty typical QWERTY layout with 10 function keys. However, they decided to forgo a number pad and instead dedicated the keys to functions like page up, down, scroll lock, and so on. They aren't even in the same positions they would be on the number pad on the IBM keyboard, so yeah, it's a little bit different. The arrow keys are scrunched in at the bottom here, and we don't have any dedicated arrow keys anywhere else on the keyboard. We also have some keys that you don't see on PCs. We have a literal start button that is used for certain software to begin execution. Pause, by contrast, temporarily stops it. Hold down Alt and sysconfig and you're brought into the Mindset configuration or BIOS menu. Hit Alt and reset and it performs essentially the same function as Control-Alt-Delete. The system will automatically reboot and try to boot from a cartridge or disk. Inside there is a small PCB with microcontroller that handles decoding. Anyway, that's it for our hardware tour. Now it's time to reassemble and put this Mindset through its paces by trying out software, some of it specifically designed for Mindset, some of it adapted for it, and some that wasn't at all. We'll put the Mindset through its paces and answer a burning question. Just how incompatible was it really with existing PC software? Okay, so we have our Mindset all set up here and ready to roll for our software tour. My plan for this segment is to give you a taste of what the Mindset operating experience was like, including a tour of key pieces of software that were tailored specifically for the Mindset's unique graphics capabilities. And finally, of course, I really want to test out the Mindset's limits in terms of what software it was compatible with, specifically games, which tended to be the source of most problems. Also, I just want to put a disclaimer here that this video segment features a live CRT monitor in action. I have taken steps to try and eliminate the high-pitched CRT whine that is the enemy of many young ears. I even used an Android app called Spectroid to detect the 15 kHz signal and smother it with a low-pass filter pillow. Anyway, I think I got it, but as my middle-aged ears can't hear that sound anymore, caveat emptor. For our demo, I'm going to be using an Apple II composite monitor. Why? Well, because the digital RGB, despite how crisp it looks, only delivers 16 specific colors like EGA. It cannot sample from the other 496 colors that are theoretically available. Composite, on the other hand, does give us access to the other palettes. The first screen I'll show you is Mindset's famous rotating 3D logo. The computer takes a moment to render it, and then the animation starts. This is the screen that Mindset defaults to if it doesn't find something to boot from and hasn't lost power. Of course, if the system lost power, then you get the config menu I showed you earlier. You can proceed from here by inserting a disk or cartridge and hitting Alt Reset. Of course, the Mindset, being billed as a PC compatible, runs a Mindset customized version of MS-DOS, specifically version 2.11. Functionally, Mindset DOS is no different than other MS-DOS variants. Anyway, I think it makes sense to start a tour with a slideshow tour of the machine, right? The first disk I've selected is the Mindset demonstration disk. If you perused a computer store back in the day, chances are you saw software like this running on various machines in the store, showing off those systems' capabilities. Mindset was no different, and their demo disc takes aim at several markets that Mindset was intended for, including design and what we refer to as multimedia. And of course, it shows off the Mindset's unique capabilities. I will say, I really dig these old school graphics. Seeing stuff like this as a kid, there was something magical about them, especially how they were often slowly drawn and filled in. I'm not sure if the Mindset's graphics acceleration capabilities are being employed with this toolbox animation, but man, does it take me back. First up, we have some examples of using the Mindset for design, and I think this is a circuit board layout or such. And then we have some landscape design. I'm gonna guess the toil rooms in the science lab plans are actually toilet or bathrooms. Otherwise, yeah, they really work scientists hard, don't they? And we have a floor plan. Yeah, there's just something special about vintage graphics. There were so many compromises that had to be made owing to limitations in screen resolution and color. And yet, despite those limitations, these graphics just feel, I don't know, a little more alive to me, more soulful, if you will, than today's. Of course, one of the Mindset's biggest applications was digital art. And I gotta say, these sample pictures look awesome. I know art like this was possible with CGA Composite on the PC, but I believe CGA Composite relied on artifacting, whereas these are direct colors, I think. And here we get into slide presentations, the equivalent of PowerPoint, I guess. And of course, Mindset uses it effectively to boast of the machine's capabilities and features. Note, they mention the single floppy drive again and quote-unquote optional second drive. With only 360 kilobytes on those floppies, I seriously doubt anyone would have been interested in just one drive. And what would a presentation be without useless charts that nobody really pays attention to? Although I will say they look pretty nice, and the page turning thing is particularly neat. I think that probably uses the accelerated graphics. Okay, now this acid hydrogen loop thing I think definitely is using the graphics accelerator. Yeah, look how smooth that is. I'm pretty sure I saw PC presentation software back in the day that could render a 3D pie chart like this, but the smoothness of the moving pieces I think wouldn't have been possible without accelerated graphics. Seeing this though does really take me back. Okay, what's next? Well, no tour would be complete without showing a piece of software every Mindset came with, GW Basic. Supposedly this was available on both cartridge and disc. I've never seen the cartridge version though. And here we are in GW Basic, which is basically just Microsoft Basic. And so what I'm going to do is load up a couple of supplied sample programs. The first is Saturn, which basically demonstrates the unique animated graphics you can do with your Mindset. It's quite a long program. Anyway, let's give it a run. And there is Saturn, and it's doing a little bit of pre-rendering. And wow, there it is. I mean, that's pretty smooth. Okay, so I'm going to stop the program now and note how the graphics processor keeps running Saturn until it's off screen. Now, when I was listing the program, I saw something that interested me. I saw there are keys you can press to potentially change how Saturn behaves. So, for example, there's something about the X and Y coordinates that change when you hit X or Y, I think. And you can also pause the animation or resume it. So let's rerun it and see what happens when we press keys. Well, so far X and Y don't appear to be doing anything. I'll try pause. Okay, that worked. Now I'll hit G again. Whoa, whoa! I broke it. I don't know what happened there, but it just went crazy. Yikes. Yeah, it just sort of wigged out. Oh man, it just totally crashed BASIC. Okay, we're not going to press the G key anymore. Alright, here's a sound demo called J.S. Bach, presumably Johann Sebastian. And I'd love to tell you all the technical details about Mindset's sound system, but unfortunately I haven't really found any. Mindset provided frustratingly little detail on the sound system, beyond mentioning that it had something called synthesized audio output, which could mean lots of things, and that it could be expanded to stereo output with an add-on. I scored a scan of the Stereo Sound Module Operation Guide, which is that add-on card that gives you stereo capability, hoping that would at least give some details on the system there, or at least the card itself, which enables that capability, but yeah, it's all generalities. The only somewhat new detail I've learned about sound on the Mindset is that the BIOS control has a switch that enables a built-in motherboard beeper speaker if the sound isn't connected to some kind of amp or speaker system. Okay, let's play J.S. Bach here. Yeah, this sounds very retro, but yeah, it only seems to be single voice though. And it's a tad less squeaky than the PC speaker. Alright, let's see what else there is. Ooh, we have chess. I didn't know about this one. This was made by Odesta. No idea who they are. But yeah, let's fire this up. And it does seem to have been customized specifically for the Mindset, so this should be interesting. Ooh, it's kind of like 3D chess. Yeah, this looks pretty awesome for a game of chess of the era. It's a lot more visually appealing than some of the other ones I played. And it has sound. Again, just single boops and beeps. And I'll just put it on auto here. I'm pretty sure the graphics acceleration is being used here. Okay, and here's the only other game that takes full advantage of the Mindset's graphics and sound capabilities. It's called Viper. Sadly, I don't have the required joystick to play this. It's a little bit rare and rather expensive, but at least you'll get the flavor of it. Now, with this sound here, it does sound like we have more and better voices here. Sounds like at least 2 voices to my ear, but that's it. I kind of like the intro. It has kind of a retro, wistful feel for me. Man, if only more games had been made for this thing. Dig those crazy alien sounds. Alright, well here we go with me not having any control whatsoever. And yep, that didn't last long. Some high-tech spaceship, no autopilot. Certainly Viper kind of sets the mood right. I've heard from those who have played it that it does kind of bore at the beginning, but gets a little bit better as you move through the different levels. I don't know. Unfortunately, most people get really bored at the beginning and don't bother going further. It's a pity they didn't offer some kind of keyboard input for those not lucky enough to score a very expensive Mindset joystick. Okay, so next up, we're going to load the 3 graphics programs that Mindset offered. They were priced in sort of a low, medium, and high price scheme. The first we'll try is PC Paintbrush. I'm 99% sure this is what I used on my PC Junior back in the day when my thrifty father, for some reason, just decided out of the blue to buy or try out a Mouse Systems optical mouse. First we have to set the parameters. Interestingly, the software recognizes the Mindset 2. Given that the Mindset 2 serial numbers are much higher than the regular Mindsets, I'm almost willing to bet that there were more of those produced than the originals. Alright, so we've got 16 colors it looks like, and I think you can change the palette to get other colors, but of course you can't have them all at once. Yeah, I really suck at drawing with this mouse. Okay, nothing special here, carrying on. Now, if I read right, mine said Build Designer as the middle tier option, although to my eyes it looks way more impressive than the highest tier, which was Lumina. But I think I can see why this one ranked in the middle. It definitely looks to be geared towards the home user. One thing I'm finding it hard to get used to though is having to wait for the floppy drive to read every time I click a feature or choose a menu option. I guess I've gotten a bit spoiled with modern solid-state drives. Alright, so we got 16 colors again. Unlike PC Paintbrush though, we have some interesting features like these custom fill patterns. I'm going to draw just a yellow smiley face, Walmart-y kind of thing here. And yeah, then I'm going to just fill it with solid blue because I can. And yeah, look how long that takes. All right, and here's a pattern I can draw with. Well, that's kind of neat, I guess. And a good old airbrush tool. I have no idea what I'm going for with this picture, but yeah, we'll just carry on. Fonts, I'm not quite sure how this works exactly. I'll just try, yeah, okay, so font F. Yeah, and it doesn't really let you type anything, so yeah, I'm not really sure how that works. Let me try messing with these patterns. Walmart happy face guy gets a plaid sweater. Nice. Alright, enough of my amateuring. Let's check out some sample artwork that shipped with this software. Wow. Yeah, that looks like a scene from a really awesome game. Holy smokes, I can't even imagine how you draw that. This appears to be a really detailed pattern of some kind, but yeah, that's really impressive. Alright, let's try ice. Wow, yeah, that looks pretty realistic considering we only have 16 colors to work with here in a very low resolution. And another crystal ball kind of thing. Wow, must have spent a significant amount of time making that. Now, what is land? Ah, notice how the color palette changed. Okay, so this is an example of some of the other 496 colors that were available. And yes, a nice pastoral scene. Now, another thing Designer could do was animation. Apparently very limited animation. Essentially what you did is you took your design space and you created a bunch of small pictures in it, which you could then assemble into an actual animation. Let's look at this engine animation, for example. There's 20 pictures or cells drawn on this screen. And then basically there's a stamping tool that you use that chooses each one and puts it in sequence. Now watch what happens when I run it. Pretty neat, huh? And there's another one called Bird. Such creative names. And here we are. This one has, looks like 24 cells. Yeah, they really packed this one in. Yeah, that looks pretty great. Not really useful for much, but yeah, it looks cool. I don't think you could export and use these though. Alright, that's it for Designer. Let's check out Lumina. Lumina was a rebranded version of an existing product called Easel, adapted for use with the Mindset. Its interface feels kind of a step backward from Designer, but don't let appearances fool you. Lumina was a very professional product. Buried in its nested menu system are a whole host of tools that let you do everything from standard drawings to full-screen animation. I think Lumina may have been what was used for this demonstration of BASIC for the Army with the animated floppy disk. Alright, making my nice little castle here. Hey, what does this zap button do? Oops. Okay, well, I don't see an undo button anywhere, unfortunately, so yeah, I guess I'll have to try again. Let's go out in the ocean this time. And we'll make ourselves a nice little ship. And I'll try adding some fonts. Okay, this is weird. I don't think you can type things out here either. You gotta like drag one letter at a time out? Yipes. Although I find Lumina a little bit clunky today, I have to say it must have been pretty amazing to be at the beginnings of a whole new medium with this. Digital art. Digital art was being done all the way back to the time of the teletype period, but the ability of an average person to pick up a mouse and do a really detailed drawing like this was still pretty new when the Mindset arrived. And of course the Mindset added some additional capability that prior technology lacked. Lumina also offered an animation package, but honestly I have no idea how it works. It's a bit more complicated than just using puppet pins in Adobe After Effects, to say the least. I've tried to guess at it here, but I think it requires a more thorough read of the manual. And yeah, maybe in a future video we can take a look at that. Next up is Mindset's video producer software. And again, I have no idea what's going on here. I think you line up what you're going to show here and then run them as a slideshow or some deal with this viewport that brings up a big red curtain. Yeah, I have no idea what's going on. Let's just leave that one aside for now, folks. I'll have to do some serious reading here. Alright, now I want to take aim at Mindset's supposed #1 fault, compatibility, or lack thereof, with existing software for MS-DOS machines. 8-Bit Guy's David Murray took a crack at this on his video about the Mindset, opting to try just his own software, which predictably crashed. Based on that, he estimated that almost all games would not work. However, I really wanted to try with a much larger number of game titles just to see what happens. And to be honest, I was kind of surprised at how much actually did work. I mean, obviously text-based software would be expected to work, you know, like application software and stuff like that. Text-based games like Pac-Gal also seem to work just fine. But what about graphical games? I decided to pick a bunch out, careful to stay within the time period that was contemporary to the Mindset and, you know, staying within the bounds of what the Mindset's hardware could likely handle. And as we'll see, Mindset could do actually a fair bit more in the gaming department than previously suggested. For example, it turns out Lode Runner runs just fine. It's a little too fast for my reflexes though. Yeah, I'm playing away here and there's no issue at all. No weird behavior, no crashing. So already we're seeing some games do work. I think if there's anything wrong with Lode Runner here, it's just running a little bit faster on this 186 than it would on an 8088. It appears the mindset emulates 4-color CGA, and it does do PC speaker sound, so yeah. Activision adventure games like Tracer Sanction and Mind Shadow also seem to work just fine. This would have pleased my childhood self greatly. I'm just exploring the island in Mind Shadow here expecting a crash, and yeah, it seems to behave just as normal. Castle Wolfenstein worked also. I really didn't think that one would run. And again, I have no idea what's going on here, but yeah, it does seem to be running a bit fast. Again, that's probably the CPU, but yeah, no crashes. Takes a long time to load from place to place though. Yeah, pretty much everything I initially tried worked just fine. Even good old Wheel of Fortune fired right up. In fact, the thing that really seemed to limit me was the 360 kilobyte capacity of the Mindset's floppy drives. That really limits what you could try. Now, of course, not everything worked. Some games like Flight Simulator bombed almost instantly. But Flight Simulator was noted for that by reviewers back in the day, so that's expected. Other games, however, well, they started to load, and I could get as far as a title screen sometimes, but then, yeah, total lockup. Adventures in Serenia? Nope. Although I will note with that one, it only seems to run on a hard drive. If I copy it to floppies, it immediately throws up sector not found errors on both the Mindset and my Pentium 3. So yeah, I don't know if that's some kind of weird copy protection thing or something. So yeah, I don't know if that's a Mindset thing. I threw Test Drive at it for curiosity. I didn't seriously think it would work. Test Drive dates from around 1987, and I assumed resource-wise it would just be too much. And initially the title screen here freezes up, but if I press a key, I did get the vehicle selection screen. But then I press enter to select a car, and yeah, it's gone. The Sierra King's Quest series did essentially the same thing as well. I could get as far as the title screen, and then kablam. That would have earned the Mindset a 2 thumbs down from me as a kid for sure. I couldn't live without my Sierra adventures. I'm really not sure what resources exactly these games call upon that causes them to crash like this. Graphics and sound don't seem to be a limiting factor. I would expect that if they were, that the game just wouldn't load at all. But many of them do load and actually seem to run for a bit, like Tapper here, play for a second, before quitting. It'd be interesting if you could halt execution at the point it's about to freeze at and see exactly what it's doing. I wonder if it might be possible to patch some games for the Mindset. Anyway, as you can plainly see, there are some games that work with Mindset just fine, so the compatibility story isn't quite so black and white. If you were a graphic designer who just wanted to play the odd game of chess or let your kids play Wheel of Fortune, then the Mindset's limitations maybe weren't such a big issue for you. And besides, it just looks amazing on any desk it graces. Seeing all of this further leads me to believe that Mindset's problem really was marketing. They just didn't have the resources to get the machine seen widely enough. Okay, so for our grand finale, I'm going to show you how you could do video titling, which was a very popular feature for the Mindset. As mentioned, I have an original video titler cartridge here, which is quite rare. Now, as I said earlier, the original vanilla Mindset cannot do gen locking. It has the raw capability, but it doesn't have the actual hardware connected up. To do gen locking, we need to use my video production system model, or VPS, which I recently repaired, and this really rare video titler cartridge. The VPS, as previously stated, has a special daughter board inside that allows it to gen lock 2 video sources. You can see here in the instructional for the video production module how you can hook these various devices up. The simplest way is using composite sources and destinations. So, for example, you could play a VCR with your main video on it, and then use Video Titler on the Mindset to add titles to it, and then record the whole thing to another VCR. Of course, the Mindset, being from 1984, didn't have the hardware to record video digitally. 360 kilobytes wouldn't last very long anyway. Alright, so let's get our VPS Mindset set up here. And of course, a crucial piece to make this happen is the video production module, which is a small box that connects all the devices being used to produce your video. I managed to score 2 of these, one that came with my VPS, and another that I bought individually well before. So first we're going to have a look at the video production module itself in its original box. It's pretty simple, although it has a lot of connections to make. You've got inputs for video from the mindset and your external source, and then you've got an output. There's also a connector to a sync port on the VPS, as well as the fader control. And we have a 9-pin D-sub cable for that external sync, and then there's also a power supply. The module that came with my VPS was missing its power cord, but this one has it. Unfortunately, when I plugged in the VPS unit with this cable, some capacitor blew up, and yeah, it's not working. But this one seems to be okay. Alright, we'll get set up here. Yeah, there's a lot of cables to connect. The interconnect diagram kind of simplifies things. Obviously, we make our sync connection and then our composite connections to the computer. And then for a video source, I'm going to use my trusty Samsung unit here, which works perfectly. And we'll plug it in there and then at the module. The final connection is the fade control in. Interestingly, this goes to the audio out port on the mindset. Apparently the mindset puts out a tone that it uses somehow to judge what position the fader is in, I think. I'm not really clear on how that works, but yeah, it does. Yeah, so we're getting quite the mess of cables here. I'm just going to toss that back there. Yeah, I suck at cable management. Obviously, if I was using this professionally, I'd be doing this a lot neater. I'm not sure. I don't think Video Titler allows a mouse. I think it's all keyboard. Yeah, no, it's all keyboard. Now, one thing I should mention, I actually set this up about a month ago to test it out and see if it would work. And afterwards, for some reason, my VPS mindset stopped putting out color on composite. I'm not sure why. I think it might have something to do with the key bit, but yeah, well, yeah, it's still black and white. Well, that's odd. Turning on the VCR brought it back. Weird. Okay, well, now as you can see, I'm struggling a bit with the vertical hold. I'm not sure why this is so tricky. It might be some of the sync circuitry on the video module isn't working so well. Could be just this crappy 1701 monitor. Okay, so the only VHS tape I have left from our old collection is Dora the Explorer, unfortunately, and some commercials for other similar kiddie videos. So here's the fader control in action. And yeah, that's kind of cool. Kind of makes me feel like a pro. Video Titler is actually very simple to use. Basically, you have a box here where you can type in what you want to put on the display. And yeah, you just type in what you want to say, and then you run your sequence and it'll show on screen. And then basically, yeah, from there you would just be recording it to an external device. And yeah, I am not a big fan of Dora. I'm sorry, any parent who had to listen to backpack, 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 backpack 50 million times with their kids will understand. Anyway, here's my text, and now we'll run the sequence and watch it magically appear on screen with our video. Ta-da! Looks pro, huh? Yeah, just such a basic thing that we take for granted in the age of Adobe Premiere, but something that people were really hankering for in the 80s. Now, Video Titler, like Premiere, has some effects you can use to animate or fade in or out your text a little bit. It's quite limited, obviously, but here's an example of crawling text. Pretty neat, huh? And it looks like we're into an advertisement for Charlotte's Web here, I think. Well, oh well. Let's try changing text attributes. Let's see what roll does. Yeah, it looks like I sort of accidentally defined a box that cuts the text off at either end for some reason, but yeah, anyway, here's the roll. I wonder what type does. Yep, pretty neat, huh? Well, that's something you haven't seen in any mindset videos on YouTube for sure. I'm 99% sure my professional video graphics machine can do this also, but it uses analog RGB output, which if I understand right makes syncing RGB and composite video sources a little easier. Well, anyway, that's kind of it for our Grand Mindset documentary video. The Mindset is a really, really rare and very expensive machine to try and acquire, and I thought it'd be nice to give those of you who may never own one a chance to really get the flavor of it and what it can do. I'm really sorry this video took so long to produce, but literally as I went, I just kept learning new things and finding better ways to film it, and quite honestly, I spent hours just playing around with this machine. It's just one of those machines that you kind of look at it and you just want to do something with it. Anyway, I really hope you've enjoyed this tour of the Mindset. In a follow-up video, I'm going to show you how I repaired my two non-working mindsets and hopefully show off the professional video graphics system along with an analog Zenith RGB monitor, as well as the mindset recommended Taxan RGB monitor. Maybe I'll even see if I can figure out how to animate something and sync it here. We'll see. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.